And we begin with the deadly train accident in South Carolina. An Amtrak passenger train slamming into a freight train parked on the tracks. Crews rush into the scene of the mangled cars. You see them there, working to contain 5,000 gallons of fuel spilled from the trains. More than 100 people taken to hospitals, and 2 Amtrak crew members losing their lives. The crash, the second deadly one involving an Amtrak train in less than a week, raising questions about America's train safety. Tonight, ABC senior transportation correspondent David Curley starts us off.
Daylight showed the horrific damage of the head-on train collision. The Amtrak engine nearly unrecognizable after the overnight crash.
We've had a train derailment at Charleston Highway and Pine Ridge Drive. If y'all have any extra people, I'm sure they're not going to turn it down. They're taking everybody.
The Amtrak engineer and the conductor were riding in the front and were killed. Nearly all of the 139 passengers suffered injuries.
The first thought was I wasn't going to make it. This was the end for me. That's the way I felt.
More than 100 taken to the hospital. Only a half dozen are still being treated.
The impact was bad, man. It ripped my chair right off the floor. The lady next to me was an elderly woman. She was all tangled up in the chair in front of her.
Already on the scene, the chairman of the NTSB says the problem was a switch set in the wrong position.
It was aligned for the trains coming down this way to be diverted into the siding. So the bottom line is the CSX train is parked in the siding.
The southbound Amtrak train 91 headed to Miami was just outside Columbia, South Carolina. According to Amtrak, signals were down, and the owner of the tracks, the freight rail company CSX, was in charge of the tracks and traffic. But a switch was thrown, actually locked, diverting train 91 off the main line onto a side track. But a parked CSX train was also on that track. In the darkness of 2:30 in the morning, the Amtrak slammed into the stationary train.
Could the engineer in the Amtrak train have done anything? Do you know an answer to that yet?
Well, I doubt it, and I doubt he could have done anything. The train is going, we know, somewhere along 50 to 53 to 55 miles an hour. We need to confirm that, but moving that fast, you would only have just a second to realize you're about to be diverted onto a sidetrack.
CSX, which was in control of the rail lines, offered, quote, condolences to the families of the 2 dead and said it is, quote, working with the investigative team. But the company gave no indication why the switch was set in the wrong position.
All right, let's get right to David Curley on the scene. And David, from what we know, it seems investigators' biggest challenge right now is finding how a switch could be in the wrong position, and Amtrak never knew about it.
Right. The question is, Amtrak went down these lines at 2:30 in the morning, and all of a sudden it goes off the rail into that side track and runs into the CX train. Why wasn't it radioed? Why wasn't the switch put back on the main line? Those are the questions for the NTSB. Tom?
David Curley reporting from the scene of that deadly train accident. David, thank you. A terrifying experience for everyone on that train. One of those passengers, Matthew Cheeseman, he was in a sleeper car with his wife and daughter on their way to Florida. He joins us now. Matthew, you were asleep at the time, but what do you remember once the train crashed?
We remember being thrown out of our seats onto the floor with a lot of metal coming down around us. We remember the lights going off, smell of smoke, and just being banged around.
What did you do in the moment? Did you call out to your wife, to your daughter? I mean, there must have been so much confusion.
Well, my daughter and I were laying side by side when the actual train crashed. Together, we were thrown onto the floor. So we actually, I had my arms around her when we hit the ground. But, you know, the key piece about it is we just kind of stood up. And the Amtrak personnel was outstanding on our car to try to help us get off. And then, of course, you can't say enough about the first responders.